Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Meenakshi. How are you?
Yes, I'm doing well. We'll start in a bit.
Okay, it's okay.
Okay, I hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
Okay. So, very good evening to.
Meenakshi, are you joining with this Utkarsh Gavare?
No, sir. I'm Utkarsha actually. Meenakshi ma'am has yet to
Okay,
join.
Utkarsh. Okay, that's
Okay,
right.
okay, thank you.
Okay. So I have joined. Just
Yeah,
give me a call whenever you are ready.
yeah, sure, sir. Okay. Okay, a very good evening to all. I, Dr. Utkarsha Gavare, shall be your host for the session. I warmly welcome you all to the second day of Faculty Development Program on Effective Research Methodology and Publication, organized by Just Agriculture, the magazine, and SGT University, Gurugram. So, before starting our session, I would like to give a brief introduction of our speaker. We have with us today Dr. R.K. Yadav, uh, currently who is acting as a principal scientist in agronomy at CSSRI, that is Central Soil Salinity Research Institute, which is a premier research institute dedicated to pursue interdisciplinary research on salinity, alkalinity management, and use of proper quality irrigation waters in different agroecological zones of the country. Uh, Giving introduction about our speaker, he has completed his master's and PhD in agronomy. His main research area has been establishment of the salinity limits of the drainage effluents for their in situ recycling in cyclic mode irrigations to optimize yield and quality of less water requiring salt tolerant food, fodder, and oilseed crops of semi arid regions, hyperthermic and calcareous sandy loam. His awards and recognition includes National Groundwater Augmentation Award of Ministry of Water Resources from Government of India, New Delhi for the year 2009, Ganesh Sankar Vidyarthi Puraskar for the years 2009 and 2010 for the Best Hindi Magazine from the Best Hindi Magazine. He conducted various trainings and his research publications are numerous. So, without wasting much of our time, I would like to call upon Dr. R.K. Yadav to take over the session. Please, sir.
Okay, Utkarsh, thank you very much for your uh, words of appreciation and giving my introduction. Should I start directly? I am finding there are very low number of participants at
Sir,
present.
no, sir. Actually, we have done YouTube Live and participants are joining through YouTube.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay, it's okay.
you can just start.
Utkarsha, I'm not able to share. It says host disabled, participant screen sharing. So just
Uh,
allow me.
yes, sir. I'll just allow it. Yes, sir. Now you can share.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I convey my thanks to the organizers, SGT University officials, for giving me this opportunity to interact with the distinguished participants of this faculty development program. Actually, I shall be discussing mainly on good constituents for success of research proposal or writing good research papers. So I'll not take much time. I will give you the elements, discuss with you on these issues, what are the basics of writing good research proposals and research papers for success in their funding or publication. So, now I think, Utkarsa, is it visible?
Yes, sir, your screen is pretty visible.
Okay, thank you. So, what are the good constituents of any research proposal or paper? These include your thought process. That means we should not take or copy the ideas from anyone else, or what is in general practice. That should be avoided. You should have your own original idea and thought process. Hello,
Yes, sir.
should I continue? There is some discussion.
No, sir, you can continue. I'll just mute the participant, must have kept their.
Okay. So every proposal, whichever you wish to submit for funding, or you want to write a paper or submit to any journal, it should have your original idea, and your thought process should be very, very clear as to what you want to achieve, what is basically novel in your idea, and how you are going to achieve that, what are the processes. Those should be very, very clear. Number 3 is it should be very clear from your ideas and originalities that you have got the passion for this particular subject on which you want to submit your project proposal or research paper. These constituents and write-up structure can only help to convince the funding agency or the publisher, and that way it will help in improving the chances for getting success in funding as well as acceptance for publication. So the first 3 basic constituents are originality of idea, then clarity of your thought process, and the passion with which you want to devote yourself for that specific area of research in which you want to get funding or you want to publish. So these should be very, very precise, very clear and novel. Then comes, what are the core elements of any research proposal or paper? These are general things. I will just discuss and refresh and may add something to what you know. So essentially, for acceptance of any proposal or paper, this should the write-up should include or should follow these 6-7 core elements: the title, introduction, review of literature, aims and objectives, research methodology, scope of research, and what is expected outcome, along with what would be the timeline, specifically the sequence of activities and timeline to achieve those activities specifically for any research proposal prepared for funding. So these should follow in a sequence, and what each should convey, like title, it should explicitly highlight or focus the theme of research that you want. And what is novelty in that? What is your thought process? That should be very clear. Means we should not give very general titles. The title should be very, very specific with respect to your research program. It should be clear and concise to convey the aims and objectives at very first glance. Means whosoever reads your title should understand what you want to convey or what you want to achieve through your proposal or your research paper. This title makes the reader to further read or go through the proposal. Otherwise, if the title itself gives impression that it's of general kind of thing, and the person has not has not put in efforts to refine, define, and outline the proposal or the research paper. So it should be very clear and crisp, and it should never write. It should never include general titles. Title should not be very long, that makes it too hard to read, or too short that fails to highlight the research theme. So title should be clear, what you want to convey, what is your aim to write the proposal or the research paper. It should not be very lengthy, it should not be very short, it should not be very general, it should be very, very specific and clear. That will improve the chances of creating interest of the funding agency or the publisher. Then comes introduction. Here, everyone knows that what should be the sequence. What should be the sequence of this? However, I'll just give you some idea that the starting paragraph should introduce the subject which you want to address or the research problem you want to analyze. It should set the tone for the rest of the proposal. It is important to start with a broad background of the problem, means what is the scope, why you intend to develop this particular study, and then organize your original thoughts in a logical and organized manner. That could be like background information with explanation of the proposed research question, what we want to study, and why that is worth studying. That means we should clearly define the significance of our problem with background and what are the existing gaps. And based on that, we may propose that these gaps can be achieved through this particular methodology. And we should frame our hypothesis. Expected important contributions with specific boundaries. Here, it is very pertinent to keep in mind that whatever we suggest or hypothesize that will certainly have specific boundaries. Those will not be applicable in every situation. So we must define that, yes, my research proposal will be, or my hypothesis would answer this particular question with these specific boundaries or assumptions. So that should be very, very clear. Keep introduction clear and concise. Make sure to include only the most relevant information. Never go for very lengthy or just using copying and copy typing, or like those things should be avoided. Your original thoughts, your original ideas, your original hypothesis, and why and where it can be applied with specific assumptions or boundaries, that should be included in, only that should be included in your introduction. Then comes thereafter, if certain abbreviations or those are used, you should include that part. Definition of terms or abbreviations should follow introduction. These abbreviations or concepts should be defined and explained clearly, unless they are very, very familiar or obvious in nature. And please keep in mind that only authorized sources should be referred while defining these terms and abbreviations. Otherwise, we may lead to confusion among the readers. Then comes literature review. It's not always necessary, but yes, certain significant, related or relevant study research should be included. A research proposal need not to include a full review of literature, but it is always important to include overview of the most significant relevant studies conducted in the field of proposed research. That should be, means we should not make review of literature very, very big, or unrelated things should not go into that. The studies which are directly related or which have direct correlation with our study, those should be included, and those will definitely help us in identifying the gaps. This section should feature evidences and statistical data to clearly demonstrate the significance of our proposed research. The review of literature should be organized in a manner that the reader easily draws attention to existing research. Yes, the reader should get clear-cut idea. Once he gets or reads through the review, he should get clear idea what is the status of research in the proposed area of research, and should be able to identify the gaps clearly, which we are targeting to achieve. Then the expected contribution of proposal. Then out of that, we should give a paragraph on what would be the contribution of our proposal after it is completed. Then comes aims and objectives. Here I would say that we should clearly define in our title itself what would be our aim. That should this title should reflect that what is the aim of this particular proposed study. Aims and objectives should signify what is intended to accomplish in this research proposal. Aims should emphasize again expected overall outcome or what we want the research to achieve. It should be clearly indicated in our aims. Then comes the narrower part of objectives. The objectives will be more apt to provide an explanation for each objective to show how this will help to meet the aim or aims of the study. So the objectives are the stepstones of the broader aim that we want to achieve. So our objectives should be clear and directly related with what is the aim of the research. So it should be clear with respect to aims and objectives. And then based on that, we may frame our hypothesis, which should give a clear-cut direction that yes, this is my hypothesis, and this hypothesis intends to answer this particular question and is likely to achieve this aim. Then research methodology. It should be very, very clear. Methodologies are the proposed research methods which we intend to use during the study. These must appear in the research proposal even if experimental research is not conducted. The research could be social science research. It could be based on secondary data. It could be based on population survey. So, but in those also, there would be some methodology or some tools. Those should be clearly defined that yes, I will use such and such methodology, and this is the logic to use these methodologies. The methodologies include analysis, sampling techniques, equipments, research approaches, and ethical concerns. These should be included in your methodology part. Explanation for each methodology should be clear and very precise. It helps to justify the choice to use a certain methodology over an alternative. There could be 2, 3, 4 type methodologies by which we can achieve our objectives. But what we are intending to use and why we are intending to use that particular and what advantages in specific case this particular methodology which we want to use have over other alternatives. This will help to show that you took your time to think about your methodologies before picking them. That gives the impression on the funding agency as well as the publisher that you are thorough, you have understanding about alternatives, you have gone through, and you have picked the best one to address or to achieve more precise results with use of a specific methodology. It is again important to explain how you will collect data, the sample size you plan to consider for your research investigation, and the techniques you consider the most appropriate to analyze the data. So this will have an impression on the funding agency as well as publisher that the proposal is submitted by a very competent person, and they develop faith and confidence in you that yes, you can deliver on these on the submitted proposal, or whatever you are trying to publish is an authentic information. Scope of the research. Since working time and resources are always limited, this is well-known fact, and it is very, very limited. You can see time, resources in terms of manpower, in terms of funding, in terms of your lab facilities, and you can say it is universal that the required resources are always limited. So it is always reasonable to include the scope of research, that yes, my research will cover this particular aspect, and it would be applicable on this specific aspect, and it will be able to answer this specific answer. Proposal should justify that the research will start and will be completed within the constraints of the resources. It should be very, very clear. Also, it is pertinent to include the limits of proposed research, as we discussed earlier, that every research will not be outcome of every research will not be applicable to every situation. So we must also include the assumptions or the boundaries or the limits of our research program, and how we can address them. That should be included in the scope part. It will also give clarity of your thought process and also give authenticity of your research proposal. Don't just focus on the challenges, but also include or propose the alternative solutions which can help in achieving the shortcomings of particular research, so that gives you lead for further investigations in that specific area. Again, as time is also limited, so the funding agencies, they expect that what is the sequence of activities and what is the timetable to achieve that sequence of different activities. Means if resources like funding or manpower is constrained at particular stage, what will be exact outcome by that time? That should be clear. The purpose of outline is to show how the research proposal plans to structure the study. Means what is the sequence of activities? What is the time frame of those activities? What is the funding requirement of each activity? That should be clearly defined. Briefly note what each section will cover and explain how it all fits into the argument of your research project. Means if any unforeseen situation arises, in that situation you can give the funding agency idea that yes, I will be able to achieve up to that particular activity, and that particular objective will be achieved by what time. The purpose of the timetable is to show how much time will be needed to complete any research. In particular, make sure to mention exactly how long you expect each stage of your study to take place. Don't just mention how long the research process will take. Make sure you also indicate how long you will take to compile your research result and present that in specific format. So it should be the sequence of activities as well as the time frame of activities should be very, very clear. Then after taking all these aspects, we can say what are the basic crux of good proposals. Quality writing is must. The proposal should be clear, concise, and free of jargons. Means it should be easily understood, understandable by the reader. This should be always kept in mind. Never use jargons. Never make your proposal confusing. It should be very clear and should not be very lengthy. There should be no spelling or grammatical errors, and the proposal should be easy to read. The most important fact is that start early and share ideas with peers. That means start thinking today itself that you want to work or you want to answer this particular question, or you want to identify the problem and the solution of that specific problem. What are your ideas? How that can be achieved? Start thinking today itself. Don't wait that whenever there would be a call, then I will start thinking. Then you will not find enough time to review, enough time to get feedback from your peers. So start early and share your ideas with peers that yes, I want to work on this particular aspect. These are my original thoughts. If you have any suggestion, if you have any idea to further improve this process, please give me. Incorporate the feedback of peers and also gain relevant ideas from reading. So the most important element of good proposal would be to start early and share your ideas with peers. Get feedback, incorporate those. If you are not convinced, go for reading, find out maximum information, and then build upon your ideas. And whenever there is any call for funding, you can plan accordingly. Otherwise, it's very difficult to develop a project within very short period. So till now, we were discussing about good research proposal that had also elements of good research paper. And now in next 3-4 slides, I will just refresh your ideas. What are the different ways to write good research paper? See, once the research problem is identified, methodology clear, results are achieved, you have compiled them, interpreted them, then there comes to write high quality paper. And it is to identify and understand which journal would be most suitable for publishing that particular research. Means, what is the scope of any journal, whether my research will fit in the scope of that journal. Identify journal, and then as per the scope and your results, try to compile your paper in as per guidelines of that journal. A good research paper needs to follow certain criteria or writing approaches as per the requirements of a particular journal. Every journal has its own guidelines or criteria to select papers for publication. A paper considered good for one journal may not be that good fit for another one. So, identifying suitable journal for your research is very, very basic for improving the chances of publication of your research. Understanding the journal helps to reduce the time taken for publication of your research paper. Then, after identification of journal, the important steps are to follow author guidelines. Journals judge paper based on their set criteria, and these include: does the abstract and paper follow the journal guidelines? Does the paper examine relevant literature critically? Is there logical analysis and discussion? Does the paper contextualize its findings with the international context? Means, some journals have scope of local importance, some have international context. So, what is the scope of my research outcome? Is it basically answering certain local questions? Then we should think of publishing it in some local journal. If the results can be further applied in other similar ecologies across globe, then we should think of publishing in international journals. Is there methodological clarity? Are ethical considerations made transparent? I think it is missing among all of us. We usually include the names of our known persons, our colleagues, without their contribution. So this practice, it's my thinking. I don't say that this is very pertinent to every situation, but yes, try to include the names of only those persons who have contributed, either in conceptualization of the research proposal or research paper, analysis of the data, interpretation of the data or the results, or in writing. We should never leave any person who has directly or indirectly contributed in formulation or implementation of any project, or writing statistical analysis, chemical analysis, then interpretation of results, and writing. Those persons never should be left. They should be given due credit. But we should try to avoid giving undue benefit to the persons who are not involved in it. Does the paper follow the journal's reference style? It should be considered into mind. Does the paper consider the database and debates that have happened in the journal? Yes, it is again very pertinent. The journals, they see whether we have included the relevant debates that have taken place in the journal, which are relevant to our findings. Are there subject related implications? So these things have to be considered while writing a good research paper, and that improves the chances of acceptance and publication of our research. Academic journals usually accept papers that meet their criteria and scope. Therefore, papers should be structured and written based on the criteria of chosen or identified journal. Some journals focus on methodology. Others may not. So these journals don't accept the journals which focus mainly on methodology. They don't accept papers that focus on reporting the findings, but they particularly include discussions, reflections, debates on methodological issues. So if we are trying to publish our methodology with comparison of alternate methodologies, then we should think of such journals. So as such, the focus and content of paper should be structured based on journal scope and criteria. The last step is maintaining the scientific standard of paper is not specific to one but common to all journals. In general, the paper should be organized into the introduction, methods, results, and or discussion for most of empirical papers. The key elements of these sections remain same with certain changes in different parts of the paper to fit into the criteria of that particular journal. As such, journal tips for organizing a good research paper. These include don't exceed the word limit given for a paper in specific journal. Sometimes we usually take chance that let us submit if it is larger than the limit prescribed. It will be usually returned and then will delay the publication. You may need to rework the word limit that delays the publication process. Don't copy paste any part of your introduction or the abstract. Proofread your paper before submission. Try to avoid grammatical errors and typographical mistakes. Choose a specific accurate title as we mentioned earlier. The title should give an overview of what your paper is about. This should be accurate and specific and reflect the content of the paper. Abstract should be interesting. A clear abstract should outline the works of your research. This will help you to carve out a specific space in your field. Include some notable achievements and try to explain how your research builds on them. It will be more impressive to add a graphical abstract with description of methodology in the paper. Words should be very selective, keywords. Don't you include general keywords. What are the specific objectives or the methods or the aims which we are trying to address, the relevant keywords only should be included. Make sure to present novelty of your research. What is novel in your paper? Keep it simple and clear. Never try to self-plagiarize. Keep the presentation directly relevant to the topic. Right? See, this is again why I have kept it in different color. This is very, very important. We usually write abstract first, then introduction, then methodology, but write methods and your methodology first, then results, then go for abstract, and then write introduction and conclusion at the last. This should be sequenced. Otherwise, what happens? We start with introduction, we copy some part from somewhere, and we will, in that process, we leave our original thought process and ideas, but we go around whatever has been already said in certain published literature. So please make this habit. Write the methods and materials section first, followed by results, then write abstract, and then start your introduction. And once introduction and up to introduction is over, then write your conclusion that yes, this is my conclusion out of my this particular research. Check in what format the plots or graphs or figures are accepted in the journal. Improve language. It will improve your research paper and chances for publication. Acceptance. Declare any conflicts of interest if you have. Follow reference style. Read it again thoroughly. And if possible, ask your co-author to read it again. That will definitely help in finding certain flaws, certain language checks, certain spell checks, or if anything is missed out. So it should be considered. And at last, I would say that if we follow appropriate guidelines, then we can improve quality of our research proposals as well as research papers and their chances of getting funding and acceptance for publication. So these things are very common things. My aim was just to refresh you, and even if you have certain points to discuss, I would be very happy. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really a very informative presentation and your talk.
Okay, madam. Thank you. Thank you, Utkarsh.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Meenakshi here.
Okay, Meenakshi has joined. Okay, Meenakshi, thank you. Thank you very much.
Sir, I have one question.
Yeah.
Most of journals are having paid, but how to identify non-paid journals? Because those journals are having a good NAS rating, they can charge for publication. But how to identify chargeless papers?
Well, Meenakshi,
Research journals.
there is no such procedure to identify which are the paid ones, which are the free journals. You have to just
Yes.
go in your subject area and you have to exercise on this. Then only you can actually now for the last 2 3 years, most of journals have gone on charge-based publications. They
Yes.
are
Yes, sir.
charging processing fee, but there are still good publishers like elsewhere. If you have,
Hmm.
if your scope is there in those journals, you should think of elsewhere. Certain stranger journals are also there.
Yes.
So try to find out uh, the journals. Don't go for Frontiers, MDP. Those 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 journals are usually paid journals.
Okay, sir.
So as such, there is no set uh, procedure to find out. You have to work on that.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Meenakshi. Thank you, Utkar sir.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. It was glad having you for this session. Thank you once again for joining.
Thank you very much.
Uh, so participants, moving towards our next session, I would like to introduce Dr. Sendil R. Before inviting him for his talk, I would like to give a brief introduction of him. Dr. Sendil serves as an associate professor at the Department of Economics, School of Management, Pondicherry University. He has around 15 years of experience in research and development, including the coveted agriculture research services at the Indian Council of Research, Agricultural Research, ICAR, and 7 years of experience in teaching and mentorship at ICR NDRI Institute. He has published 118 research papers in peer-reviewed national and international journals and has been honored with several recognitions, including Lal Bahadur Shastri Outstanding Young Scientist Award, Fellow of the Society for Advancement of Wheat and Barley Research, Dr. R.T. Joshi Award for the Agricultural Economics Research Association, Young Agricultural Economist Award from ERA, Best Worker in Scientist category, ICR, Indian Institute of Wheat and Barley Research, Professor Mahatim Singh Memorial Award, Uma Lele Mentorship Award from the Agricultural and Applied Economics Association, USA, Netherlands Fellowship Grant, LILMI AAEA Award, ICR Indian Agricultural Research Institute Fellowship for pursuing PhD. He is University Gold Medal during post-graduation at from Acharya NG Rangan Agricultural University and ICR Junior Research Fellow for pursuing post-graduation. He has edited and authored 7 books, completed 7 research projects, and presented his research proposals and findings at various events held in the USA, Canada, Italy, Australia, South Korea, Japan, and Ghana. He is an editorial member of the Indian Journal of Economics and Development, a peer reviewer of several Scopus Index journals, and a guest editor of Frontiers in Sustainable Food Systems. His interest in teaching agricultural economics and executing transdisciplinary and multi-institutional research, fostering innovations and policy formulation, leading to agricultural transformation. So now I would like to call upon Dr. Sendil to take over the session. Please, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Krisha. Let me put off my video because I think the bandwidth is low from my side. I think if it doesn't bother you, I think I can put up the video and then I will share the slide and then I will.
Sure, sir. You can go with it.
Let me share the screen and make sure the slides are visible. The slides are visible?
Yes, sir, it is visible. Yes, your screen is visible and
Okay.
slides are also visible.
So good evening to all of you. So first, let me thank Dr. Utkasha and a team from Just Agriculture for giving me this opportunity. Today, I'll be talking about for a couple of minutes on research publication and outreach. What are the different ways and means through which you can publish good research papers and how it can be, carry forward to, the message what you have published in the paper, how it can reach to science and society. So I've organized a presentation under 4 heads. First, I'll be talking about the different publication types and ethics in publication. Then, using my own experience and the experience gained from my co-authors in publishing several papers, I'll be telling about how to publish right from draft stage to submission stage. Then, how to outreach, how to make the publication outreach, that is to reach several stakeholders. And finally, I will conclude the talk with some key take-home message. So first, let me talk about the different types of publications. So publication basically is the outcome of your research work. And of course, it is the final stage of your research work, and whatever you are publishing, it lies with the sole responsibility of the researcher. So there are several types of publications, starting from general articles, which means it doesn't cater to the specific subject domain. So anyone from any discipline can read and understand. And usually the research article will target a specific domain. Then we have review articles. Basically, review articles also is a part of research. So you are taking a core topic and you do in-depth research, and you come out with a comprehensive understanding of different authors. Apart from that, you are also putting your own view and present your insights. The research communication, basically, it's a short form of research article wherein you have the word limit and illustrations limit. Also, there is a number of tables, a number of figures will be limited. Of course, research note and research communication also almost one and the same. Some journals goes by name research communication, and some journals goes by name research note. And research news is something like advertisement you are giving pertaining to your vacancy in your lab. So that comes under research news. Commentary is a publication wherein you give your views and insights on your recent topic. For example, a couple of years back, several researchers have wrote commentary on doubling farmers' income. That's one example. Then we have book reviews, policy forums, which talks about some specific policies. Then we have book chapter, and apart from that, we have preprint. I will be spending some time exclusively on this in the subsequent part of this lecture. So the difference between the type of publication I have listed and the preprint is all the publication above the preprint are peer reviewed. So it will be published after review by a team of researchers. But whereas preprint is a publication which is done without any review. There are some preprint servers which lets the researchers to showcase your research well in advance before sending for review. Some of the preprint servers I have listed here. SSRN denotes the Social Science Research Network. We have Arxiv, MedArxiv, BioArxiv, then preprint server. Then we have Research Square. These days, when you submit any paper to any journal, a majority of the journals, they give you option that whether you want to publish this paper as a preprint, because right from submission to publication, it takes even sometimes some of my papers to 2 years. So 2 years is a long period. So, but when I give the option for preprint publication, so within a week or 2, it gets published. Of course, as an author, you have the privilege to update the preprint once the paper gets accepted, or even you have the option to withdraw the report also at any point of time. So coming to the publication ethics. Publication ethics basically is a set of rules of conduct which is generally agreed upon by the researchers when you are publishing your research outcomes. So whenever you want to publish, as an author, you require honesty, clarity on the results, or subject, then accuracy of your reporting, then completeness and balance of mind. So balance of mind means you should not be switching towards one side. Suppose if you are working for the government, it doesn't mean that you always write positive with the government. So you should have a sense of neutral attitude to present your research findings. And publication should also avoid misleading information, or you should not give any selective information or ambiguous reporting. This is again a part of publication ethics. So what I want to say is, as a researcher, it's imperative that you should adhere to some rules of conduct with respect to publication, which is known as publication ethics. For example, fabricating the research data or falsifying the facts. So these are all some of the examples of, unethical publication. The plagiarism is a very serious issue. Plagiarism means you are lifting someone's idea or text and presenting as your own idea. And self-citation also is considered as an unethical publication. Then sometimes what happens due to the long period from submission to publication, a frustrated author generally what he or she does, choose multiple journals and submit the same paper at one go. Again, this is not ethical thing in publication. And regarding the authorship, everyone, I think we include some of our friends' name. Sometimes we include our guide with its our contribution. Then we include some known person's name just to get the paper accepted. So these are all some of the unethical ways which you should not practice when writing a paper or while submitting a research article. For example, if you take ghost authorship means without any contribution, the particular author contributes to the paper, but his or her name will not be in the list of authors. So that is called as ghost authorship. Honorary authorship means you are giving your authorship to a person who is popular in the profession. Then guest authorship, usually your known circle, that is friends or acquaintance, just to make sure that you use his or her name, so that when he or she writes a paper, they give your name. So this kind of things are considered to be unethical in publication business. Then improper, whatever I told, all these things are improper way of giving attribution to the authorship. So these things should be avoided while publication. So this is the message from this slide. So with this, let me move to the next part of today's presentation, where I will be focusing on the process of publication right from draft to submission. So before writing a research paper or even a review paper, first draft the outline. So as a corresponding author, you should take the responsibility of making the outline of the paper. So in the outline, make sure that you give a conceptual design of the study. So what it wants to address, what are the implications you are going to draw from the research. Finalize the different headings and subheadings. So it doesn't mean that whatever you are doing now, it is final. It's not that. Just you are making a draft, and in due course of time, this can be improved. And make sure what are the things you are going to include under each head and subheadings. So you can just give in bullet points. I have given a sample on the right side of this slide. Of course, it is my own paper outline, which is published right now. Then, so you have to improve the draft. Of course, this needs a collective effort. So once you made the outline, so share with the co-authors or even to your mentors and to ask their suggestions so that improvement can be done at any section. So one option is you can share with them by email. But I would suggest it is better to share through Google Doc. So because once you share by email, suppose you are sharing suppose if you are sharing to maybe 10 or 15 authors, so you'll be getting a written mail from them. So it will take a lot of time to incorporate all the corrections given by the possible collaborators. So what I suggest is if you share the document in a Google Doc, so it will ensure that everyone can see what the other collaborator has given, incorporated in the document. So that advantage is prevailing in while you edit in Google Doc. Suppose if I'm editing the title, so that will be visible to the person 2 or 3. So whatever they are doing as a corresponding author, I can see. So ultimately, the corresponding author will take the final call, but still the editing or the improvement done by each and every author is known to the whole team. Once it is done, then you distribute the content. That is, person A can write the introduction, person B can work on the data and methods, person C can do the analysis. So based on the expertise, you distribute the paper contents, and of course, everything has to be coordinated by either by the senior author or by the corresponding author. Usually, it happens by the corresponding author. So again, one more advantage of Google Doc is so proofreading can be done. So these days, when you're working in the university system, you have access to several proofreading softwares like Grammarly, which is quite expensive. If you don't have access to such softwares, there are some free softwares available on the web, so that also can be used. Google Doc is one such tool wherein it highlights wherever the errors exist. So that will help to rectify your grammatical mistakes or punctuation marks, or even sometimes advanced version will suggest change in the structure of the sentence. So this will help the authors to improve the quality of the manuscript. Once the outline is done, so the next step is I'm going by section of the paper. So first is the introduction. As a thumb rule, 1/10 of the text should be allotted for the introduction. So it means that if the paper is around 20 pages, so 2 pages can be allotted for introduction, excluding the references. So when you start the introduction, make sure that there is some noise in the host. Can you? Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay, there is some noise, I think. Kindly mute.
Yes, I'll just mute the.
Yeah, thank you. On writing the introduction, particularly with the initial paragraph, make sure that it stands on its own, which means that without any citation, write the paragraph on your own understanding. Then after that, you can write the introduction with many usual citations. Generally, I recommend review should be a part of the introduction, but some journals, if they specifically ask for a separate section for review, you can do that. Otherwise, a majority of the journals, they look for review as a part of introduction. Next thing is you have to highlight. Highlight means in the construction of the sentence. So you have to highlight the rationale or motivation of this investigation and what this investigation will help to address the research gap. So there are several types of research gap which is given in this slide, starting from evidence gap, knowledge gap. Then we have practical knowledge gap, methodological gap, empirical gap, theoretical gap, population gap. For example, if you take methodological gap, maybe your investigation will help to generate a new insights or to avoid some distorted findings. Empirical gap means the research findings or propositions need to be evaluated on empirical basis. So highlight which is the research gap your investigation is going to address. And apart from that, what is the uniqueness of this study that has to be given? Whether this study is the first of its kind, or you are replicating this study which is already done in some other country, or you can say that when this investigation has been carried out till 2015, and this paper will count the data from 2015 to till date. So something, what is the uniqueness of this study? It is always good to mention explicitly. And the introduction should end with the specific objectives of the study, make it very precise. And when I review papers, I used to see several times the authors used to mention the subsequent sections and their contents in the at the end of the introduction, which I feel, of course, it is my opinion. It doesn't, because usually a research paper runs for about 20 or 25 pages, not more than that. So, as a reader, everyone knows that the first section will be introduction, second section will be data and methods, third will be results and discussion, fourth will be policy implications, conclusion. So you are not going to bring any new section. So unless if a journal has any specific section which is not usually found in other journals, then it's okay. Otherwise, there is no need to mention the subsequent sections and their contents. Generally, we do this while writing the thesis, but for research papers, it is better to avoid, so that you can save some space for the other section. That is my concern. As I already mentioned, that review preferably should be a part of the introduction. There are several ways to attempt a review. So when if you are a beginner to write a review paper, so I have given some list of web portals. So you can take the help of these portals to review. That is, for example, the first one is connected papers. So when you give the DOI number of a paper or the title of the paper, it will give the list of papers connected to the paper what you have given, so that you will get a bunch of papers which is on a similar domain. So it is easy for you to know which author have worked on this research area, so that it will be easy for you to review. So apart from that, there are several databases like Scopus, Web of Science, Google Scholar. So using the keywords, you can retrieve the publications and you can review manually. Of course, manually you have to review. There is no other option. But these days, there are some artificial intelligence aided tools which also gives a sort of comprehensive review that I'll be highlighting in the last part of this. Suppose if you are from a specific domain like agricultural economics, which I have found, you can use AG search engine, so wherein you can find only agricultural economics research papers. So once you download the set of papers in which you are going to work, so you can read all the papers one by one, and you can synthesize the information and you can start writing the review. So this is one way. The other way is bibliometric visualization. So this is what you call a visual tool through which you can present the review of the research progress, any particular theme or any domain. So Vivo is a free software. So you can using the link, you can download the software. And for executing this software, you need a database which can be downloaded from Scopus or Web of Science. So once you download the database in CSV file, that is comma separated value file, so you have to upload into the software, and it will give some options based on the authors, co-authors, country, journal. That is, which country is doing the maximum research on a particular topic, maybe like GMO, genetically modified, maybe GM food, genetically modified food. So it will give the country which is working or which has published more papers on GM food. Similarly, which author is a leading researcher on the particular domain. So this kind of information you can get in visual form. So I have given you an example on the bottom right of this slide, wherein the visualization shows the different countries which are working on GM food. USA talks, I mean, the size of the circle shows the level of research progress, right? And again, the color, there are different colors. Each color shows the network of the countries which are working together. Anyway, this is a separate thing to discuss. The next section, that is data and methods. Whenever you are working on this section, explicitly state the source of data and possibly give the URLs if it is available in public domain. Suppose if you are working on experimental data or survey data, kindly mention the design clearly. If you want to make it more clear, better to present in visual form. It is always appealing. And also make sure to share the data if it is asked during the process or even after the review process. So you keep the data in hand. So whenever you get a request to share the data, you share it. Also mention the period of this study explicitly, because whenever I review papers, particularly from domain which involves survey, what they do is they might have conducted the survey almost 5 or 6 years back, and maybe because of continuous rejection, the paper might have got delayed in publication. But the authors will not mention the year in the abstract or even in the data method. So whenever they review, it always creates a curiosity why they are not mentioned. So I give as a comment, specific comment, kindly mention. When I see the revised version, I always used to see that the data might be very old, maybe 10 years or 12 years old. Of course, if the journal allows the publications which are like 5 years old data, 6 years old data. As a reviewer, I don't have any objection. Otherwise, I will write to the editor that this paper contains the survey data, which has done 5 years or 6 years back. So he has to take the final call. Then when you are working on any conventional tools like coefficient of variation or arithmetic mean, so it is not good to mention the formula because everyone knows what is this. So just you mention the method and don't give any equations. So if you are working on other methods, obviously you give the equations, of course, with appropriate citations. When you want to develop a new empirical model, so always start with the theoretical framework. What is the theory behind that? Then you just keep on building the relationships between variables, and then you arrive the final model. So when you are working on any equations, so in the Word document, there is an option for equation editor. So you use that option so that there won't be any changes in the equation while it gets published. Because whenever you are using when the format changes from DOC to DOAX or from doc to PDF or from doc to any other format, the format gets changed. So even it may denote a wrong formula. So to avoid that, better you use equation editor. The next section is the results and discussion. Usually, a majority of the journals have this section as a combined. But there are some journals wherein results and discussion are two different sections. For example, since last week I was working on a paper which was submitted to Frontiers group. So while submission, the corresponding author submitted this section as a combined one, results and discussion. So it went to the review, everything is done. finally, the editor gave a call that this section has to be separated. I mean, the result should be presented separate and discussion has to be done in a separate section. So now we are working on it. I mean, so we are putting extra effort to segregate the results and discussions. So just to avoid the wastage of time, decide at the beginning itself. So which journal you want to target. So there may be a combination of journals, but make sure that all these journals which you have selected at the first phase, make sure that either the results and discussion go as a combined or as a separate. So accordingly, you can draft it. Always follow the journals template so that you have to read the author guidance. Every journal gives author guidance, so read carefully and follow the journal template. But of course, this is a kind of burden to the authors because once the journal rejects the paper following a particular style, then again you will be submitting the rejected paper to some other journal which might have a different style. So we have to spend a lot of time in changing the citations, then tables or references. So what I want suggest is first you read the author's guidance carefully so that you can draft the manuscript as per the journal guideline. And these days, several journals are giving an option for format-free submission. That is, when you submit the paper for the first time to a particular journal, first time means the initial submission. Irrespective of the format, they consider for review. But once the review is done after round one, if the editor feels that this paper has a chance for publication, they will request you to change to the journal's format. So this is somewhat, I mean, for the authors, it is somewhat good because it will reduce the burden in changing the format. So when you write the R&D section, so break down the section as per the head and start presenting the results. Always present the results, tables and figures. Because I have seen some papers which presents only tables or sometimes only figures. So try to give a combination of both tables as well as figures. Suppose if some journals charge for figures, then that's fine. Then we can go for illustration of only tables. Always discuss the results with supporting evidence. These days, people write the results without corroborating the findings of other papers. So always try to discuss the results on both aspects. Which authors supported your findings and which authors contradicted your findings. If you give both, it is always good. And whenever you are presenting the tables or figures, always try to give, of course, you have to explain that, and finally you give 1 or 2 line summary for each illustration. Then for the whole section, you conclude very briefly at the end of the R&D. The next major section is the conclusion. Make sure that you conclude the whole paper right from introduction to R&D. So introduction maybe 1 or 2 lines, then the methods again 1 or 2 lines, and the rest of the paragraph should rely on the basically conclusion section is the extended version of the abstract, but do not either lift the abstract content and paste into a conclusion, or don't lift the conclusion content and present as an abstract. Make sure the meaning should be same, but you should construct different sentences. Usually, I suggest 1 paragraph, maybe a lengthy one on the conclusion, and then the subsequent one should highlight the limitations of your research. Whatever the limitations, to highlight it explicitly. Then if it is a social science research, you conclude with a couple of policy implications. And then irrespective of the subject, if you give 1 or 2 lines on the future directions of the research, it will be good. But majority of the researchers, they won't do, because that will give as an idea for the maybe for someone else to take up research. So sometimes we don't have an open mind to give suggestions which can serve as a key idea for the next research. But I always look for future directions when I review any field. So these are the major sections. Apart from this, there are other sections like acknowledgements, then author's contribution, conflict of interest, and data availability. So you give due acknowledgement is maybe your guide or your institution or anyone who supported you in data collection or in analysis. Explicitly give their names or organization in acknowledgement. And these days, almost every journal is asking the contribution of the author, who contributed in what capacity. So an example I have given at the right side of this slide. Then conflict of interest. Do you have any conflict of interest? Usually we give there is no conflict of interest. Then with respect to data availability, as a editor, as an author, I always try to get a positive response. That is, data will be available on email request. Okay, if you get an email, you send it. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. And the next section, of course, the most important and time-consuming, I would say, is the references. So, because when you refer papers, every paper has its own way of giving their citation. So there are several softwares available these days which help you to synthesize the information from these papers, and it will generate or it will give the references in a particular style. There are several styles like APA, that is American Psychological Association style. Then we have Chicago style, American style, Harvard, Oxford, Bradford. So a lot of styles are available in the publication business. Most of the journals I have seen usually follows the APA style. So once you set the software to this style, automatically it gives or it changes the format to the style which you have prescribed. The advantage of using software manager is, suppose if the paper gets rejected in journal 1, which looks for APA style. Okay, rejection came. Then you are looking for another journal. Unfortunately, that journal looks for Chicago style. So in that case, again, if you're doing manually, you have to do all the references. So if you have done the referencing using software manager, it automatically using a single click, you can change the formatting style. So this is one advantage of using the software manager. The next is the authorship contribution. So already I told improper contribution is unethical in publication business. Then is there any guidelines to follow so that you can give due credit to the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors have come out with a 5-point scale, which is presented in this slide. Score ranges from 0 to 5. 0 means no contribution, which implies that the name should not be included in the author list. Then 1 indicates the negligible contribution. Again, the author who scored 1, their name should not be acknowledged in the research paper. Then the other score ranges from 0 to 5. There is a minimal contribution to poor contribution. So whichever author gets this score, he or she, her name or his name can be included in the author list. Now the question is, which activity is assigned with different scores? Score 1 for which activity, or score 2 for which activity? So that is again a question. The subsequent slide shows the score for different activities pertaining to a contribution from authors. For example, the concept development is assigned score 4, research design score 4. Then supervision to any of them. If the score is more than 1, you are giving the authorship. So now the concern is which activity is assigned with score 1, which doesn't qualify for the authorship. One is study material collection. If it is a paid job, then it is assigned 1 as a score. Then data collection, it's a paid job, then 1. Then copy editing and proofreading, that is also assigned 1. So all these 3 contributions doesn't qualify for the authorship. So now the question is, so back to acknowledgement. So we have to give the acknowledgement in the specific section, that is acknowledgement. So you mention the organization or the person name and give the due credit. So once you finalize the draft, the next important thing is choosing the journal. So choosing a right journal is a very challenging task. So there are several criteria based on which you can choose a journal. Usually I go by 4 options. One is impact factor. Then second one is days to first, then acceptance rate, then whether the journal is under open access or subscription. So these are the 4 major criteria on which I choose a journal. Again, choosing a journal under different publishers, I have provided the link. For example, if you want to publish in Elsevier journal, so there is a link given in the slide. So you have to paste the abstract title, and sometimes some journal finder asks for your domain in which your paper belongs to, maybe like agriculture or economics or biotechnology. So once you choose that option from the drop-down menu, then it will give the possible list of journals based on the abstract and the title. Okay, it doesn't mean that is the best list of journals, not necessarily. So again, you have to cross-check each and every journal based on the aims and scope, then days to first decision, then the acceptance. Suppose if the impact factor is something like 3 or 4, but the acceptance rate is only 1% or 2%, then better to go for some other journal which is having a better acceptance rate. Suppose if your journal is having something like 11 months for the days to first decision. So 11 months is a long period. Okay, so you have to wait for 11 months for the first decision. First decision means whether it is going to the review process or not. Again, after review, again, it may take maybe 3 months for one round, again 2 or 3 months for another round. So obviously, the time period will stretch to 2 or more than 2 years. So that is also an important criteria which you have to choose a journal. Coming to the journal requirements, of course, it depends from journal to journal, but I am given a set of things which is always what you call which is always good if you provide when you submit a paper. The first one is the cover letter. So in that you can mention what is the uniqueness of your research and who is going to benefit from your research findings. And if you have already uploaded any preprint, you can give the link, and possibly you can suggest some potential reviewers, maybe 2 to 3 reviewers who are working on that topic. Sometimes the journal itself asks for the potential reviewers. So in that case, there is no need to mention in the cover letter. Otherwise, you can mention in the cover letter. Then highlights, that is, you are giving the major findings in 5 to 6 bullet points. Sometimes some journal gives some restriction that each highlight should be within 80 words. I have come across. So based on the journal guidelines, you can give the highlights. And if you want to have a better outreach of your paper, So always I suggest to have a graphical abstract. In some journals, it is mandatory, and these days video abstract is also given. Maybe in future, I think video abstract also might become a mandatory stuff. Then, since you are sending a manuscript for review, I would suggest to give the line numbers. Suppose if the journal itself, does this and that is giving the line number, then fine, you can ignore it. Otherwise, because once you submit, almost all the journals gives the proof of your final submission. So if that will give you an idea whether the manuscript line number is generated by the system or not. If it is not generated, you can do manually. There is an option in the word processor that you can use that option, and you can give the line number. Otherwise, if the system generates, then it is fine. Some of the journals, they look for manuscript text separately, author's detail in a separate page, and sometimes they ask the illustration, that is tables and figures, as a separate file. But very few journals look for such kind of submission. Otherwise, the majority looks for submission of the manuscript as a single document. That is, it contains all the text, tables, figures, then including author details. These days, disclosure statement becomes a mandatory for the majority of journals, so be prepared to disclose the information. Then I also suggest to give the supplementary information in the form of tables, figures, or data sheets or appendices. If the journal has some restriction with respect to the page limit, that is, if they are allowing only 20 pages, but you have some tables which cannot be accommodated within 20 pages, then give it as a supplementary, right? So I have given one example of graphical abstract. So the purpose of graphical abstract is you are presenting the research findings in a visual form, so that even a non-technical person, once seeing the graphical abstract, will be able to understand what the paper wants to review, right? Coming to the next topic, as I already told that preprint is a very important and emerging thing in publication business. So the advantage of preprint is, so you can, as an author, you can claim the first reporting, particularly after the incidence of the COVID. Several researchers have worked on maybe on vaccines or the impact of COVID on any business. Since several researchers have worked, so obviously there will be a sort of competition who publishes first, because one who publishes first obviously gets citations, right? So if you're working on a specific area and if you want to publish, obviously it takes some time. So to avoid that, you can share the final draft of your manuscript in any preprint server, depending upon the subject domain. So with that, you can claim as the first reporting author. So that is one advantage. And each and every preprint service, they assign DOI number, that is digital object identifier. So they assign a DOI number, so that will be fixed. So if you click that DOI number, it will direct to the particular print. And all preprint servers host their papers as open access. So anyone from any part of the world can read your final manuscript, and it is open for public review. Suppose if someone feels that this paper has serious flaws, they can give as a comment, because there will be a provision in the preprint servers to give comments that will help for the authors to improve and submit to a regular journal. Sometimes what happens, depending upon the quality of the preprint, editors also, because editors also will be having some account in preprint servers. Based on the quality, there is a chance for inviting the paper to submit to their journal. Because I have got one invitation from an editor to submit a paper on COVID, so I have done that. So another advantage of preprint server is, for example, if you see the picture I've shown in the slide, the preprint which I uploaded on SSRN, that is Social Science Research Network, which is on COVID-19. So I wrote the preprint in 2020. So as a team, we worked and we thought to put the final draft in the preprint server. So we shared the preprint with SSRN in 2020, and the final publication came in 6th April 2022. Almost 2 years. It took 2 years right from drafting to final journal publication. So during these 2 years, this preprint has been cited 27 times, which is though it's not a high number, not a low number also. So I would have missed these 27 citations if I didn't share the paper in preprint. So, and again, I also had the chance of getting some comments for improvement. That also we did, and we published it finally. And as an author, when you have an account in preprint server, you have the provision of updating the preprint, that is the draft to the published version. So you have the privilege. So that can be done. Even if you want to remove the preprint, that also can be done. So the next part of today's lecture is publication outreach. So research is incomplete if you are not presenting the findings or communicating to others. The purpose of making your publication known to others is it gives some meaning and the purpose of the research what you have done. It also helps to create some positive impact on the society. Of course, the other advantages, like it adds to the existing body of knowledge. You can get the feedback from different stakeholders, and you also make sure that what the research you have done is known to the peer group, and of course you get a recognition based on the quality of your research. Right. So there are several ways through which you can do this. You can use the power of web media and social media. You can share in different media like Twitter, ResearchGate. There are a lot of ways and means through which you can share your research paper, but make sure that the journal in which you are published gives access to the complete document. Okay, it is always better to share the URL instead of the complete paper. If the paper is open access, and as an author you have the right to share the document in public forum, then you can do that. Otherwise, it is better to share the link. So alternatively, when you are presenting any posters of your research, generally cannot give the URL, which because since it is in JP uneditable format, you can print the URL, but no one can click and see the original version of the paper. So for that, I suggest you can scan the poster into QR code, and because these days everyone has smartphones with QR code scanner. So using that, they can have access to the any uneditable publications like presentation of posters. Then regarding the citations and H-index, as a researcher, we always bother about the citations and H-index. How to increase the citations? Obviously, so you have to share your research with your peers, take advantage of the preprint servers, and publish the results early. And when you are giving the keywords, try to avoid mentioning the country. So it doesn't serve the purpose, because when you are mentioning the country like India, so no one is going to put India in the Google and search for research papers. Okay, so you should have a vision that which keyword will direct to your research papers. Accordingly, keywords should be given. Then link the paper to the supporting data in a fully accessible repository. And apart from that, you can share the program codes so that people will do some trial and error based on the code, and this will lead to higher citations. Then how to use the H-index? So H-index means the number of times. For example, I have given my own example. So H-index is 19. So which means that 19 papers, research papers have minimum of 19 citations. Okay, then I-10 index is 41, which means 41 papers have at least 10 citations. So when you are working in an academic institute, they always look for a higher H-index. So to boost your H-index, I suggest to collaborate with senior researchers. Usually papers with famous first authors get more citations. Then you have to choose a right journal. If it is an open access journal, it's good. Of course, you have to pay some price, but there are some journals which publishes your paper in open access form without any payment. Then think about your audience. So based on that, you can maybe a research paper is always needs technical knowledge to understand, but that information can be translated to something like a popular article, and so that everyone can read and understand. So this will get popularity, and obviously it gets cited. So obviously showing up your research on social media, which has positive impact on citations. Then coming to the last part of the topic. So far, I have been telling about the positive things, which one you have to do. But there are certain things which you should not do in a publication business. One is plagiarism. We have to discuss that. So to know how much you are plagiarized, there are some softwares like Turnitin, plagiarism, and other softwares I mentioned here. So using these softwares, you can find out the extent of plagiarized text. Then you should not alter the data, and make sure you are not violating the copyright rules, which is a very serious issue. Then do not submit a paper to multiple journals at the same time. Then authorship disputes should be fixed based on the scoring which I suggested. And always try to avoid the predatory journals. Predatory journals, you can find out that is these journals, they take very less time to publish, but they charge very high. So if you want to know which a particular journal is predatory or not, you can get the help from the Beals list, which is published at the global level. And for India, you can use the help of EBC CAR list, which will list the authenticated journals and predatory journals. So the final message from the presentation is kindly follow the publication ethics, collaborate with senior authors so that everyone grow together. So to be a good researcher, you should always choose an appropriate journal to make your research outcome visible to everyone. Then read the author's guidelines carefully before the submission. As I already mentioned that these days, the role of preprint is gaining a lot of momentum. So think about the preprint, particularly before submission. And in case if your paper gets a continuous rejection, so preprint is the only option. If your paper is not at all going to be accepted in any journal. Once the paper gets published or even the preprint, try to popularize your research by using multiple platforms, including the social media. So with this, I finished my lecture, and I'm giving some useful tools like what I said in the initial part of this lecture. So these days, the role of artificial intelligence gains a lot of momentum. So the one is Chat GPT. So it is a bot which helps you to arrive some information based on your query. Several people have used Chat GPT as an author also, but the journals have come out with strong guidelines that ChatGPT should not be used as an author. So it's a very useful tool, but the information what is giving, I would say it is not 100% precise. You have to little bit cross check with the fact, and then you can use it and you can cite also. Then these are some of the tools which can be used for checking the plagiarism level, for setting your references, and also to write the manuscript. And this slide shows the different research grant. Of course, since I'm from agriculture domain, I have listed the possible sources which offers funding for agriculture-based research. This is not the complete list. There are several other sources also there, but whichever is popular, which came to my mind, I have listed this. So with this, I will move to the feedback. Of course, since we are running short of time, I will skip this. I thank the Just Agriculture team for giving me this opportunity. I would like to end the lecture with a quote that academic success depends on research and publication, said by Philip Zimbardo. So my suggestion is so follow the publication ethics, improve the quality of your research, and make sure the research what you are doing reaches multiple. That is how it helps to increase the value of science and how it's going to help the knowledge of the society. So with this, I conclude my presentation, and again, I thank the audience for your patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It was indeed a very informative talk, and we have few questions from the participants.
Yeah, sure.
So if you permit me, yeah. Sir, as you have mentioned about the preprints, so if somebody like if somebody is facing continuous rejection for their research article, so they can go for preprint as you have suggested. But if somebody is publishing their paper as preprint, so should it be considered as a publication in their CV, like if they are applying somewhere? So will it be considered or not?
Yeah, you can mention as working paper. Okay. So you can mention as a working paper, and you can show in the CV. So unless it is published in a regular journal, that will not be assessed for your maybe career advancement or for other recruitment or right. But publishing as a preprint will help to increase the citation, and of course, it will make sure that you have done something first. If it is here, it's a unique work. That is the purpose of the paper. Okay, suppose if the paper gets rejected always in different journals, so what is the option? Better you publish in a preprint and go for another research.
Okay, sir.
Right.
So if we go for preprint, like, and later on we want to publish it in some journal, so does it consider the plagiarism from the preprint paper?
No, it is not considered as a plagiarism, because in the cover letter itself, you will be mentioning that this paper is already in the preprint server. Okay, so you are already informing the editor. And there are some journals which strictly says that the paper should not be in preprint server. In that case, you withdraw the paper from the preprint server, and then, for example, if you take Nature, climate change, they don't allow preprints. So because they want to have the information published from their publisher, that should be the first thing. So in that case, you withdraw the paper from the preprint server and submit as a fresh one to the journal.
Okay, sir. Sir, according to you, which is the best statistical tool or software one should use for data analysis? Like if they want to publish in good journals.
Data analysis again depends upon your expertise. Okay, even Excel, using Excel, you can do a lot of things. But I would suggest R software. So R software basically it's not something like user friendly like SPSS, but you have to do some code. R and Stata. So these are the two popular softwares which is widely used in the international level, and it is also accepted by the publishers. R is, of course, it's a free software, but Stata is a paid one. So you choose which one is out for you.
Okay, sir. Sir, in the and I just want to ask a very basic question which I have got from some participant. Like sometimes people advise us to write paper in a pattern, like they ask us first of all go for materials and method writing, then result and discussion, and in the end, like in the and you have to write the introduction part. So does it affect the publication or the acceptance rate, or what will you recommend, like how we need to write the paper? Like we should start from the introduction, or we should follow some other pattern for better publication or for better writing of the paper?
No, there are some, some researchers, they suggest data and method should come first, then you have to write R&D. That is fine, no problem. So depending upon your time availability and the availability of materials, you start. So ultimately, any paper or any document, it should contain right from introduction to references. Okay, but it is always suggested to write the introduction at the last. To start with, because I have also come across several thoughts from different senior colleagues that start the paper right from data and methods, then you start the R&D, then other things can be added at due course.
Thank you, sir. With this, we are done with the questions, and it was a very informative time with you, and your talk is self-explanatory. So thank you for taking out time from your busy schedule for this program. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks.
So participants, now it's time for our third guest speaker to join the virtual podium. And let me just check it. Just wait for a minute. Our guest has already joined. Good evening, sir.
Very good evening.
Good evening, sir. I welcome you here on this virtual platform. So, sir has joined, and before inviting sir to deliver his insightful talk, I would like to introduce sir to our participants. So, Dr. H.C. Sharma sir has served as the Vice Chancellor of Dr. Y.S. Parmar University of Horticulture and Forestry, Nauni, Himachal Pradesh. And previously, sir has served as the Principal Scientist in the International Crops Research Institute for the Semi-Arid Tropics, Hyderabad. And sir has also served as the Visiting Scientist at QDPI, Queensland, Australia, and University of Wisconsin, Medicine, USA. So, sir has experience of 40 years in education and research, and sir has carried out collaborative research with scientists in India, Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, and USA. So, under his leadership, Dr. Y.S. Parmar University was ranked among the top 100 universities in India by NIRF between 2017 to 2019. And sir improved the ranking of university by ICR from 51st position in 2017 to 11th in 2019. So sir has authored over 750 publications, which includes 8 books, 13 information bulletins, and 302 research papers, 80 book chapters, and which has citation of 10,546 and H index of 50 and IH 10 index of 185. So the ResearchGate profile of sir has a list of 355 publications with 2,601 reads and 8,584 citations. So sir is the among the top 2% scientists of the world, particularly 217th position sir has secured in the world, and he is the top ranked scientist in entomology in India based on the research conducted by Stanford University, USA in 2020 and 2021. So, sir has made scientific contributions by several academic, and he is a member of several academic societies, including and sir has various awards like 9 gold medals and Millennium Science Award by ICRISAT, Excellence in Science Award by Consultative Group in International Agriculture Research, and Hariom Trust Award by ICR. And he is a fellow of 11 academic societies, including National Academy of Agricultural Sciences and Entomological Society of America. And sir has served as the president Council of International Congresses for Entomology from 2008 to 2016. And he was the first Asian who was elected as president of.
Can stop.
Thank you, sir. Your expertise and your achievements are endless. So I was just telling
No,
that to the participants.
I think maybe we should be brief. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, and welcome. Over to you, sir.
Okay, good evening to you all, and of course, thank you, Just Agriculture, Utkarsh and Himani, for linking me with the present day researchers, as I would call myself as the past day researcher. I left active research in 2016. So the topic maybe I can interact with you is writing a research paper, and each one of us have our own idea. So when we plan to write a research paper, the one of the first things we like to do is what's that we want to communicate, what's the data or information that we have, and which audience we want to target. Is it the scientists, the administrators, or it's the farmers, for example, if it is agriculture research? Of course, we are probably talking all about agriculture, and of course, then to decide where to communicate our research. Is it a research journal, if it is for the researchers, or magazine for the general audience, or we can also communicate by digital media. It's several people do it actually. The digital media is becoming more powerful now, as it on the internet, or it's the audio visual, or it's on the YouTube, and actually there is a lot of information in the digital media now. Then of course, once we ask those questions is, then the first thing we try to know is, we should state clearly that what's the problem that our research intends to solve. And of course, to make it more clear, in the beginning, we should write the question and the answer in one simple sentence. Then we know where we start and where we end. And in the meantime, do we have enough evidence to answer the question that we intend to ask? So this is what we should know. Many times we try to put too much information in a paper on different aspects of a research topic. And if we put too much information on the different aspects of the same problem, then it makes it less attractive than if it is focused on one simple problem. And based on that, we should decide what amount of data we communicate in a particular research paper. Then, of course, where to publish it. So we decide on the right format for the message or the research paper. And of course, we can write a research paper, or we can write a review article based on literature research. Actually, very good review papers published in good quality or high impact journals, they get you actually more citations than the research paper. So we should do both. But a research paper we only write when we have contributed enough in a particular area and you become a recognized scientist in that particular field. Then, of course, we decide on the journal. When we decide on the journal, of course, first we like to decide what's the impact factor of the journal where our research can be published. Are there pay charges? Can we pay it? Or is it open access? So there are different combinations that are available. So we must decide on where and how we can publish it based on the resources we have. But if you put in enough effort in writing your papers and your paper is attractive, it contains that interesting information. Quite often, the journals that are published by the different public houses, they often are ready to waive the page charges if you state that you don't have a project that can pay for the page printing charges, or you have no other sources. So based on the quality of your research, you always have a chance to either have a complete waiver or half waiver for the publication charges. But when you decide on that journal, we must make sure that what we want to communicate is within the scope of the journal. What is the title of the journal and which is the audience which then reads that particular journal. And but when you decide on the journal, then we should also know, is it relevant to the audience? If the research is meant for Apple, or it's on weight, or if it's on coffee, is that journal read by our target audience? And of course, if we don't take a right decision, if we take a wrong decision, we lose the time, because if we send it to inappropriate journal, they would probably return it to you. Or sometimes we may not be able to publish. I have seen several scientists over the years who write a paper, submit it to a journal, it is rejected, and then they feel dejected or not make an effort to publish it. So we must take the right decision, which journal, where, which quality, what impact factor, and of course, how, not exactly fast, but so that our article is published in a reasonable period of time. When we start writing a research paper, of course, the first thing is we must create an outline of the research paper, like its abstract, introduction, results, discussion, and of course, right from the beginning, when we decide on the journal, we must follow the journal style guidelines very strictly. Quite often the papers are rejected because they don't follow the journal guidelines. And of course, when we make a first draft, so then we revise it, it's read by our co-authors or supervisors. And with each revision, we must have the same file name, but with the dates, appropriate dates as we advance in the review process. And for writing your research article, of course, first is we complete the review of literature first. This thing used to be done very systematically 25 to 50 years back, when we used to sit in the library for months together, look at the abstracts, like review of applied entomology or review of genetics, which used to give the extra abstracts of all the papers that are published in that particular field. I'm not sure they are still published, but they are not as freely accessible because the library is no more subscribed to them. Then we also look at the relevant journal or journals which publish the papers in our field, and then complete a review of literature. We used to have a literature review cards. Then when writing a review of literature, we used to put 100, 200 cards before us and then synthesize the information that was available in the literature. That not only helped us to understand what has been done earlier, and then to see what new information we have, but that also added to our knowledge base and understanding of the subject that we are dealing with. And then, of course, you prepare the tables and figures as per journal style right in the beginning. So when you sit for writing the results and discussion section, you have everything in front of you. And of course, when we like to do it, we set a deadline. I complete writing this paper in 1 month, in 6 months. And of course, those deadlines should be there for ourselves and of course for our co-authors. That's very important. Then when we look at what we write in an article, first is we state is the null hypothesis. For example, fertilizer application increases yield. It's not a null hypothesis. The null hypothesis, we are neutral that fertilizer application may or may not increase the crop yield. So that's a null hypothesis. And then when we apply the fertilizer, of course, we present the evidence in our research paper. And then, of course, whatever results we have, we assess the validity or the strength of our paper or the findings in relation to what supporting evidence or contradictions are there in the literature, and then we draw a conclusion, what is the outcome of our study. And of course, when writing a research paper, we do the title. Title is the most important. That invites the interest of the reader and of course the reviewers and the people, editors who are dealing with the journals. Of course, the title page has the title, the institution, authors, and of course their order is very important in relation to the contribution that each of the authors have made in that particular paper. And of course, most important thing is that we give credit to all the people who have helped in doing that research, either by guiding you to identify the problem, to the actual work that is done in the lab or in the field, and of course, those who have helped in giving the right shape to your paper, who are part of that research teams, so that nobody should have a hurt feeling, someone saying 5 years down the line that, look, I was part of this research, I did it, but I was not given authorship. But equally important is not to include names of the people, because someone is a head of the department or someone is a dean and director. And I know of some people who are have very high citations or have become more popular, but they at times give the name of the people who are no way connected to that research, even including the names of something like vice chancellors or director generals or something like that. We should never. We can give. We can thank them in the acknowledgement section. That is more ethical. If they have helped in getting us money or helped us in our mission, but certainly not putting the name of the research paper. And of course, when we write the title of a paper, I said this is the first important component that decides whether your paper will be accepted or it may be rejected. So if we just want to impress the audience, then we can say, we answer a question, high density planting results in increased productivity of fruit crops. Can it be apple, guava, mango, or any other crop? Or alternatively, we can ask a question. Does or can high density plantings increase productivity of fruit crops? And that also invites interest of the audience. Oh, this is a new field. How much is the effect? What is the effect? And what we can do with this thing? Then, of course, in the process of writing a research paper, when we state the previously published information, then we should write in the present tense. Malathion controls insect damage in tomato or cotton, because that is a confirmed information already available in the literature. But when we describe the results or our own work, then we did that research over the past couple of years. So that is a past. So we write to describe our results in a past tense. For example, we tested a new insecticide for insect control in cotton. Not that a new insecticide is tested for insect control in cotton, is now or will is tomorrow, but we did our work in the past, so we tested. And then we can again make a decision. We can either write in a passive voice or we can write in an active voice. It was found that malathion reduced insect damage, but writing in active voice, mostly when we write our materials and methods, then we should write it in active voice. We found that, or we did it, we planted the crop. Okay, we observed that, right? Then it gives an impression to the reader that you actually did this work. Another thing to make sure is that we are consistent in using a term again and again, what we used in the materials and methods. And of course, we should define the term when we use it first, so that we may not confuse the reader again. And of course, if we are using any abbreviations, like I give the example here of SAT, we used to write it in a cricket, is semi-arid tropics. So in the first mention, we use the semi-arid tropics. In the brackets, we can write SAT. And in the rest of the paper, we can just use the term SAT instead of using the whole term. And sometimes if we are repeating a particular term or mentioning a particular thing by a single name again and again, then people might become bored. So sometimes we can write a rose, a flower, or another synonym that we may have, which describes that particular object properly. And quite often, this sometimes is like a disease. People write a very flowery language. That doesn't help. We have to be concise, use short sentences that are well connected, that do not confuse the reader, so that you don't put a pressure on the mind of the reader that, okay, this the earth is round, it goes like this, and of course, I'm not sure how it should be put. And abstract is the most important component of the paper. Most people, including myself, we first read the abstract of a paper, and if it invites your interest, then you go to the results at the discussion or the conclusion section. So first, in the first 1 or 2 sentences, we should highlight the importance of the subject, like cotton bollworm or helicoverpa is the most damaging pest. And of course, then we come to the area of our study. For example, host plant resistance is one of the major components of controlling this pest if we are working on resistance breeding. Then we also should describe in 2 to 3 sentences about the materials that we use, experimental design, and the techniques we followed. So you say the test material was planted in the field in a randomized block design to study the relative susceptibility of the test genotypes of the breeding material under natural infestation or leaf. Then be, of course, how you did it. The leaf samples were collected from the field, lyophilized and subjected to fingerprinting by GCMS or HPLC. So what you see here is that in the materials and method part of it, I'm using the past tense, and that's what I said in the beginning, that we must follow it. And of course, then we come to the major outcomes of the study in the results section. So just to took out a sentence from one of my papers that the genotypes 1, 2, 3 showed high levels of resistance to Helicobacter armigera, but where? Under natural infestation in the field under no choice conditions. So no choice condition tests were done in the lab. And another outcome of the result is that the amounts from the GCMS studies that, for example, amount of malic acids were negatively correlated with leaf damage, while oxalic acid showed a negative association with leaf feeding, and leaf feeding is with the leaf damage. So leaf damage is in the field and feeding is under the lab condition. And then we come to the discussion. In the discussion, we discuss our results or major findings in relation to what has been reported in the literature and what is the additional information that our study now contributes to the science. So that should highlight it. So for example, but most important is what is the usefulness of our study. So then we indicate what should be done is the implications of using GCMS HPLC profiling of organic acids to breed for resistance to Helicobacter armigera have been discussed. So that is what results. Of course, you also give a conclusion in the end. Actually, this maybe this slide should have come first, but when we write, of course, that was the abstract part of it. Now we come to the introduction. So when we write the introduction, we draw the interest of the audience to the topic in a proactive manner. We target the specific audience of the scientists or whether entomologists or breeders or agronomists. Then in the literature review and in the introduction, we identify the gaps in the knowledge to highlight the importance, why we did the information on mechanisms of resistance to chickpea is not available in the literature, and hence we study this antibiotics mechanism of resistance in a such set of lines and relevant field conditions. And of course, when we end the introduction, then of course we end with the question hypothesis that we want. Therefore, we conducted these studies to understand this particular aspect of the insect-plant relationship. Then materials and methods. It's also very important that what is the breeding or genetic material be used or the chemicals be used and the equipment be used to carry out our studies. And of course, said earlier, write the methods in a past tense. And if we use a previously published technique, then we give a reference, and if we have made any change, we describe the modifications that we have made. And of course, we should give appropriate subheadings so that the reader is able to follow the techniques or the methods that we have used to in a particular study. And we must then say in the end, statistical analysis, what software, what particular package that we used for data analysis. And quite often when we have conducted the research, either we have data in numbers, we have in percentages, or we have the quantities. To reduce the error variance, we should then convert numbers like insect or plant population if there is a large variation into log values. And if we have the data in percentages, we convert them into arcsine values. And if we have quantities like yield, then we convert into square root values, so that reduces the error variance. Because if the error variance is too large, quite often the papers are rejected. And then of course, data should be presented in tables or figures as is relevant, but quite often people do a mistake. A discrete data is presented as a line diagram, or data in a time series, or say incremental doses of a fertilizer or insecticide, that's also presented in a diagram. But if our treatments are discrete, means they are not connected to each other, then we should present them in a bar diagram with the standard errors. And if our data is collected over time, first week, second week, third week, or we have incremental doses of 15 kg, 20 kg, 25 kg, and 30 kg of nitrogen, or 0.51, 0.15, 0.2% of insecticide or whatever, then such data we can present as a line diagram. Presenting data in figures makes the results easily comprehensible, both to the reviewer and to the reader. So we should use appropriate style or method to present our data. And of course, if the data is presented, of course, in the table, then we should use the appropriate statistical package, either to differentiate the means or differentiate the interactions between different treatments. And when we write the results, highlights of the data that are presented in the tables or figures, a few of those data can be selectively cited or mentioned in the text to highlight your findings. And of course, we use the past tense. We just state the facts and we don't give an explanation in the results section why it happened and how it happened. This is an example of the presenting the data in the bar diagrams, like data in the BT or non-BT cotton. They're not related, but it's neither a time series nor it is a incremental doses. So we present the total protein content in the BT and non-BT cotton, whether it is a leaves, squares, or balls. So these are discrete, and then we compare the two treatments. But if our data is in a dosage or time series, like 0 to 70 micrograms of the gentamicin per microliter of the Helicobacter diet, and then we of course record data on weight gain by Helicobacter or mortality of Helicobacter, then we present it in a line diagram. We can easily understand the relationship that as we increase the amount of antibiotic gentamicin, there is increased weight by Helicobacter on BT impregnated artificial diet, and the mortality also reduces. Actually, this was a classical research on development of resistance in insects in transgenic crops. Most people felt that it is because of the cadherin gene mutation that confers resistance to Helicobacter. But here our results showed that if we kill the microbes in the gut of Helicobacter by these antibiotics, then Helicobacter becomes less sensitive to BT protein. And most of you will be wondering, those who are working in entomology or biochemistry, how this happens is the proteases that are produced by the gut microbes are responsible for converting protoxin, carbon AC protein, into toxin, which then causes mortality of Helicobacter. If we kill the microbes, then there is less production of those proteases in Helicobacter gut that convert the protoxin into toxin, and as a result, the Helicobacter is better able to survive, or it gains more weight. It's not affected by the BT toxins. You want to read more on this particular aspect, you can just go into search literature on Sharma or the lady who worked on it, Miss or Mrs. Reddy. This research is reported in half a dozen or more papers. And then to create an impact in the reader or in the reviewer, if you want to highlight your techniques, then probably say we used interlard fish melt technique to increase shoot fly infestation in sorghum under field conditions. So these are interlards or infestor row techniques, and this is the fish meal. And this is about the results, that the glossy lines with the light yellow erect shining leaves, that genotypes are resistant to shoot fly as compared to the dark green and drooping leaves. This is CSH1, those who know about sorghum. And this is about the glandular trichromes on pigeon pea that makes pigeon pea more susceptible to Helicobacter. Whereas these non-glandular trichomes or hairs on the wild relatives, Cajanus caravoides, this is resistant to Helicobacter. So by simply presenting these pictures in your paper, you convey your results very clearly to the reader. So this is another thing you can do. Then, of course, we go to the discussion section, and the first thing we do is we answer the question that we set up in the introduction in the last sentence, and then we discuss our evidence or finding in relation to the information and published later. And then, of course, we identify the strengths of our study, and then also point out what additional information or evidence we have provided, then what has been available till now in the literature. Then we highlight in the end of the discussion importance of our findings, and in the conclusion sections we highlight the implications of our study, and of course what is that we still need to do in future to understand this particular subject or interactions very clearly. Now, once you have written your paper, make sure that we read it once, twice, Once you complete first draft of the paper, then keep it with you for about 1 week away from it, and read it again. We will find that we have probably committed several mistakes in the paper, then we can correct them. And we also give our paper for review by other colleagues. In most institutions, like an ICRI said, we had an internal review committee. Our papers were read by at least two persons within the institute and by a language editor before we could submit it to the papers. But of course, that luxury is no more available. But then when we are doing the proofreading, we must make sure whatever we have stated in the abstract, do we have the same number in the results section and in the text and tables? If there is a variation, your paper is outright rejected. Another important point is, do the citations in the text and the reference list match? Quite often there is a mismatch between the two, and that can also become a reason for the rejection of a paper. And then of course, at the end of the paper, have we acknowledged where from we get our materials, contribution of the people concerned, and who gave the funding for this particular project. These things are very important. That establishes your faith or integrity in the committee of scientists or the people who have provided you the funding, you have provided the materials, or who have helped you in doing your research. And make sure when you submit the draft to a journal, make sure that the paper has been seen by all the authors. If you submit the paper to a journal for publication and the journals then write back to all the authors whether you agree with this paper, and if someone says I have not read it, then that's a bad reflection on our integrity. So we must make sure that we are clear in stating who all were involved and who did it and how we did this research. And then during the review process, never get disheartened if your paper is rejected, because the reviewer is always right, whether he is or he is not. Quite often I have also taken, also written very strongly to some of the reviewers who often said sorry, but one reviewer said, Harry, what you said is right, but I have taken to reject your paper, so I'm not going to change my decision. So make sure that what reviewer said is right. But when we get our paper after the review process, we read it, we keep it with ourselves for a week, 10 days, 15 days, and then of course we respond within the stipulated time. We must understand what are the reviewers' comments, and then of course we must answer them whether we had carried out a particular change or we have not carried out that change, and of course provide a justification for that. If your paper is rejected if it is not sent for review, then of course we should send it to another journal without wasting time. Of course, we can still probably write to the editor saying that, okay, this research is very important and should be considered. If the reviewers do not suggest any changes and still reject it, of course, in both these situations, we see if there is another journal. And at the end, the research is meant to see what others have not reported. Not is missing it. And then, of course, we should be able to see what others have not seen. That determines the importance of the studies that we have carried out. And of course, a few snaps from my association with the ICRI and YSPUS. I thank all the staff and the students associated with me over the years. And of course, thank you all very much for your attention, and have a nice evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sir for this wonderful talk, and we have a few questions. So
yes,
yeah,
I can attempt to answer them if I know them.
yes, sir. Sir, one question is very basic, like how we can just identify the fake and predatory journals, and how we can just identify that this journal or this website is like reliable or not.
Okay, very simple. We should look at the Thomson-Reuters impact factor of that journal, right? If it has a Thomson-Reuters impact factor, then that Thomson-Reuters impact factor is based on the 5 years quality of the papers that is published in that particular journal, okay? Or the journals that are published by the academic societies like Soil Sciences Society of India or Entomological Society of India or Historical Society of India, whatever, Agronomic Society. All the journals that just publish your paper overnight by charging you some money, 2,000, 5,000, 1,500, they are all predatory journals. All such journals are actually listed in the negative list under the UGC website, or I'm not sure they maintain such site in ICR, but NAS rate, there is a NAS rating for journals. So all the journals that are not given a NAS rating or don't have a NAS rating more than 6 or predatory journals, they are mushrooming, and people, even my own students sometimes submitted a paper without informing me to a particular journal because they need to have one paper submitted or accepted or published before submitting the thesis. They did it, but we should never do it. We should only submit our papers to the journals that are published by academic societies or the journals published by publication houses with Thomson-Reuters impact factor of 1 or more, or it could be even 0.5. For example, Current Science has a Thomson-Reuters impact factor of 0.5. I'm not sure how many of the journals that are published in India have an impact factor of more than 1, but something like Nature has more than 20, right? BMC Microbiology or Frontiers and Plant Science, they have an impact factor of, I think, around 5 to 7. For NAS rate, its NAS rating will become 10 or 11. I think we should always publish a paper in a journal with a NAS rating of 1. Or in a journal that is published by academic society. We should never publish a paper because in most of the institutions now, and I have also now revised the guidelines in UHF or in Himachal, that students or aspirants for the scientist or assistant professor position, only the articles that are published in journals with a NAS rating of more than 6, they will be given 2 marks. Those that are published in 5 NAS rating, 1, less than 5, none. So for us to be able to progress in our career, we must, and I can give you one example. If we are patient and if we apply science and apply our mind, once I wrote, we had a research conducted within 24 hours, but those were the plots that were raised by agronomists. Of course, then they spent 6 months, but our observations on the insects, numbers of something like Oriental armyworm, and now we talk about fall armyworm, in pearl millet plots with different weeding regimes. I wrote the findings were interesting, but it was one season data. So I wrote a newsletter article and it was rejected from newsletter. Then someone said that these are very important findings that you have. Then we also, of course, collected around 250 insects from each plot, reared them in the lab, and then observed the parasite population or parasitism. Then someone said that we had high rates of parasitism in insects collected from the weeded plots, Then in the collected from the weeds, the insects that were collected from the plots treated with a herbicide. So someone said, oh, these are very important findings. The weeds provide the nectar source for the adults of the parasitoid, where they go and feed and then are able to parasitize the insect larvae. So we modified it and then we published in Germany in a journal called Biocontrol that might have an impact factor of 7 or more today. At that point of time, 25 years back, it was 1 point something. So it is for us to find a value implication for our research. And to give you another example, the person who discovered fish technique to label the chromosomes or the genomic regions in plants or insects, he was a biochemist. He developed this technique, but he did not. He didn't mention the application of his findings in future research on DNA or genes and gene inheritance. After some years, he lost his job and then he was driving a taxi. Another person who did the same work, but indicated the implication of this FAST technique to study the genetics and inheritance or gene function, structure and function. I think he got Nobel Prize, and I think you find out on the internet who are the people who did it. But that's the difference it can make, whether how much we understand the subject and how much we can find its application in future. That our results or findings must lead to the technology, and technology must lead to the application, and application then leads to impact. So that's what probably I understand of it.
Yes, sir. Sir, another question is that if somebody want to publish a first report, like they have reported a new species or something, so which journal they should choose? Like they should consider some regional or national journal, or they should go for some any international journal, like which will hold the more credibility for them.
It can go as a short article, and in any journal, wherever they can accept our those findings. It can go to international journal, or it can go to a national journal. But any journal which is included in the Web of Science or Science Citation Index, right, or SOPUS, right, only then our findings will be available to other people in the world. They will read it. If we publish our information in a journal which is not indexed, cited, not read by other people, nobody will know what we found out.
Yes, sir. Sir, one last question. Like sometimes we just get the invitation mails, or we just get to know about some new journal which has been started like recently. So should we consider that journal for publication? Because in recent years, journals, they don't have NAS or they don't have like impact factor. So on what basis we should consider a new journals for publication?
Not at all. Unless it is by a society, or it is something like Springer or Today Tomorrow's Publishers, or what are the other by Cabby or someone. If it is by an established publisher, yes, it is. If it is by an unknown, no publisher, nothing, not at all. And in fact, many people in India and Pakistan, they give it a European kind of a title, European journal or international journal or American journal. I happened, I also fell prey to it. We had a paper on inheritance of resistance to helicobacter and chickpea on genetics. Of course, I'm an entomologist. Then there is an American Journal of Plant Science or something, which was at that point of time only open access and something. I said, okay, we publish it. That journal has now become popular. It also became the highest cited article within that journal. But I could have published in something like Crop Science or Euphyllia. So sometimes we do a mistake. I did well.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Now we are done with the questions, and it was indeed a very insightful talk and informative lessons or tips you have given us and our participants. So thank you so much, sir, for taking out time from your schedule.
Thank you. Namaskar. And
Thank you, sir. Namaskar.
Good luck to
Yes.
all of you.
Thank you, sir. So dear participants, we are done with the today's session. Now we will join tomorrow for the next session of this FDP. So till then, have a great evening.